Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Trail, and I'm excited to host today's session. We're going to start with some introductions. I'm joined by Michelle Deese from Orkin. Michelle, would you like to tell us a little about yourself, your company, and your role?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Michelle Deese, and I work for Orkin Pest Control, which is the premier pest control. We're actually one of the largest pest control companies in the world. So we deal with a lot of different bugs. I've been here for about 20 years. I started as a sales agent on the phone and have held many jobs until today. And today I'm the director of customer experience. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. Thanks for that intro. My name is Jonathan Trail. As I mentioned, I run the professional services team here at Replicant, ensuring our customer implementations are successful and delivered quickly and efficiently. And I've spent about the past 25 years delivering technology into the contact center. I'm excited to be part of the team here at Replicant for the past 3.5 years. So to start with, we'll spend a quick 5 minutes to set some context and then spend the majority of the time learning from Michelle and her experiences with contact center automation at Orkin. If at any point you have questions, we encourage you to put them in the chat or use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. So with that, let's dive in. So it is hard to run a contact center right now. Staffing and capacity management is a headache. I think we've all experienced challenges with service employee shortages since the pandemic, and the role of the agent's never been more stressful, which makes turnover higher than ever. And since you're constantly trying to fill open roles, the hiring and training costs spike. And while all this turmoil is happening in the contact center, it's extremely challenging to keep customer satisfaction high. Wait times make customers frustrated. Callers are constantly trying to get around your IVR to get their issue resolved rather than being deflected. And this has, of course, both human and business costs. The existing experience doesn't really incentivize your customers to spend with you in the same way, whether that's missed upsell opportunities or inconsistent customer loyalty. And your contact center has higher operating costs than it needs to have. But this is changing. We have the transformation that's happening. And here's what we're seeing. Because tier one calls now can be automated and have minimal escalations, agent staffing and capacity challenges actually aren't top of mind anymore. Agents can focus on fewer, more nuanced calls. Your costs are also much lower, oftentimes up to 50% less than the traditional model. And actually, agents are happier because they just have more fulfillment in their jobs. And customer satisfaction actually goes up. That might be counterintuitive, but we've actually found with good automation, callers are actually have better experiences speaking with a machine versus a human. And they can do that with 0 wait times. So some of you might wonder what kind of calls you can automate to start. And what we find in the consumer services industry is that 75% of calls are AI ready. The top 4 use cases we typically automate with consumer services companies are appointment confirmations, appointment scheduling, new customer screening, and account management, things like changing your address. And these use cases we find typically make up about 75% of the total call volume across our consumer services clients. And of course, while this is what we typically see, each business is slightly different. So you may have higher shares of calls in certain areas, depending on your business. And so for us to know which use cases to best automate, what you can do is a call assessment with us here at Replicant to understand your top call drivers and those with the highest net savings potential. It's completely free and a good place to start, even if just to better understand the demands being made on your contact center. So next we'll take an actual listen to an Orkin call, which has been automated with AI, which hopefully will demonstrate the consumer screening and appointment booking process the way that Orkin is doing it. It's actually an actual recorded call, which we've taken out the personal information that's in there. And once we've played that, then we'll close out the presentation and head into the discussion with Michelle.
Hello, this is Orkin's thinking machine. Just to confirm, are you calling to book a free termite inspection?
Yes.
I can help set that up. What is the zip code of the property requiring inspection?
23704.
I got 23704. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. To book your inspection, I'll just need to ask you a few quick yes or no questions. To begin with, are you the owner of the property?
Yes.
Next, is this for the purchase or refinance of your property?
No.
Lastly, are you seeing swarming termites?
No.
All right. To book your inspection, I'll need to collect your contact details. I'll text you a simple form where you can provide that information. Can you use your phone to text right now?
Yes.
Okay, I've sent you a text with a link to a form. I'll hold while you fill it out. Please stay on the line while entering your information. Thank you for filling out the form. Okay, give me a moment while I look for available appointments. Our first available appointment is on Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Does that work for you?
Yes.
All right. Just a moment while I finalize your appointment details. You're all set for your free termite inspection on Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. at Portsmouth, Virginia. Your Orkin Pro will call you 30 minutes prior to arrival. Please make sure to be at the property at the time of arrival. Do you want me to text you your appointment confirmation?
Yes.
I sent you the text. Did you get it?
Yes.
Orkin also offers mosquito and pest control. Are you interested in any of these services today?
No.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
No.
Before we go, how would you rate your experience from 1 to 5, with 5 being the best?
5.
Thanks for calling Orkin. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, so now that we've set the stage on the contact center landscape and the problem set, an example of how Orkin's incorporating automation, why don't we go ahead and dive into the discussion? So, Michelle, thank you again for taking the time today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you tell us a little bit back before you started working with Replicant. What are some of the challenges that led you to even start your search for an AI solution?
Really, there was 3 different things that we were looking to do. And the first one was really to improve customer experience, especially in our high call volume times. We really want lower wait times. And when people have a pest issue, they really don't want to wait on hold and listen to wonderful music if they want to get it handled as quickly as possible. The second was just a solution in scaling operations. And by I mean that is Mother Nature really dictates our business. So we have years and years of call volume and when calls go up and when calls go down. But ultimately, if we have an early spring or a late spring, then we could be overstaffed or understaffed. And so finding a solution that kind of help us meet that middle criteria before we get staffed up was really important to us. And then the last was just operational efficiencies. As you've seen on the phone call, there's specific qualifiers, right, that we want to make sure are asked for our customers. And then that way we're not wasting their time by having an Orkin Pro come out and then not being able to handle the inspection correctly. So really just making sure that we are qualifying those customers and then getting the Orkin Pro in the driveway as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I guess I should mention for the participants, we chose kind of a happy path called example. I haven't had a chance to kind of go and look and see what happens when there is a termite swarm, but I can imagine there's some interesting conversations that you get to see in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, so were there any, I don't know, do you have any initial hesitations or concerns around AI adoption at Orkin? So how did you address them to gain buy-in from some of the stakeholders that you have?
Yeah, so the first one was just like understanding AI because of all the, there's been a lot of news articles that come out, a lot of, rogue AI information coming out, things like that. And so I really feel that there is a presence of technophobia around AI. And so really just alleviating that is we brought our security team in very early when we were choosing a vendor. And so by bringing them in early, them being able to vet their questions, make sure that the software company that we're using or the AI solution that we're using is exactly what we need and really make sure that our business data and our customer data is secure. At the same time, making sure that the machine is doing what we want it to do was really important. So bringing the security team in early, I think really, really kind of helped alleviate that fear. And then the second one was the fear of the use case that we chose, because termite inspections is a revenue generating use case for us. And so to kind of alleviate those fears, we had complete open communication with not only our stakeholders, but also the division sales presidents and things like that. And really saying, hey, this is our thoughts. This is what we've done so far. And during the UAT phase, not only did we have our agents UAT tested, our IT team UAT tested, but we actually had some of our stakeholders and executives tested as well to make sure that they're like, okay, we approve this, or if something needed to be changed, then we were able to change it before it went live. So I think bringing them in to do that testing also helped alleviate some of that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about these applications is that you're talking to, your customers, right? And so they're really the organization's lifeblood. So we want to make sure those conversations are, branded correctly and addressing your end customers' concerns.
Yep, absolutely.
Did you have like an approval board or some kind of a structure in place when you did kind of these, analyses and sort of, decisions?
Yeah, we did have an approval board. Like I said, we vetted it through the security team. We had to go through our telecom team, and then also our QA team, our quality analytics team. So there was a lot of people involved when we actually decided what use case to use, and then also the solution that we chose to use.
Maybe could you walk us through a little bit like what the process was like to evaluate and select the solution and the partner, like in terms of coming down to an actual vendor?
Yeah, so it was actually my first time selecting a vendor. So I was really, really self-educated, I guess, on AI solutions. I will say that I learned a lot through the process, but one of the things that we did was we looked at several AI companies, probably anywhere between 5 and 7 AI companies. And then once we got that down to 4, we then sat through a bunch of demos, asked a lot of questions, and then got references on top of that. So we did a lot of running around and a lot of homework to make sure that the choice that we selected was the best one. And really what we were doing is just looking for a company that had the technology that we needed now, right? So one of the things to understand is we wanted something very specific, and we vetted companies that were like, we don't have that now, but we may have it next year, right? So choosing a company that had what we wanted now was pretty important. And then on top of that, making sure that they listened to us. So during the demo, they actually used our use case, used the questions that we wanted them to use. So we actually got a view of what that could look like. And then on top of that, just making sure that their company matched our culture as well. So we're, the world's best pest control company. We're very proud of it. And we want to make sure that the company that we chose was able to understand that that's where we want to go and help us get there.
Yeah, I think we've kind of did that first use case, which we did the demo for, but we're continuing to work on some new stuff too. So it's been great to see that progression. Okay, so the next kind of line of questions is just around like getting into some more detail around the use case you started with, and just how did the implementation go for that first one?
So it went pretty slow, I will say that. And I think it was because, again, we had that technophobia of AI. And so we did the build. I was very, I want to say your staff is probably like, oh my gosh, yeah, so many questions, but they were very, very patient with us. They really held our hand through the entire process. So it went fairly smoothly. I will say, we spent a lot of time around teaching the thinking machine our language and things like that. And you don't want to skip that portion, right? You want to make that portion, probably a lot of your build. And so that was really eye-opening for us, but it went very smoothly. The changes that we made during when we went live and the changes that we made afterwards were very, very fast. Our prior vendors, it took maybe, a week to 2 weeks to do changes. With Replicant, it was almost done instantaneously. So that was very, very helpful on our part. And then really, it was just that they were able to work with us where we were at. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I guess I just gonna, the next question is sort of, were there any surprises, around like some of the results or, once we got live or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Thinking Machines CSAT score was actually higher in some instances than our current agents taking the same calls. And so that was kind of eye-opening. And then the second thing was how many people went through that use case, that self-service inspection, that did not need to be there. And so the biggest eye-opening thing was like, oh, wow. So how long have we had calls go to the wrong area? And so that was pretty eye-opening. And because of that, we actually have created more use cases to kind of get our customers where they need to go and increase that customer experience.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's something we've seen, in other scenarios as well. A lot of times you may not have the visibility, and I'm not sure what your legacy system was like, but may not have the visibility of what kinds of calls are coming into the different numbers or the different, IVR tree options or whatever. So is that something that was helpful in this case?
Yeah, the analytics and the reporting were amazing, and we didn't have a whole lot of visibility on that before. We kind of had human visibility where our agents would kind of say, this is what they called about, but we didn't have it from customer to agent and then in the field. Like, what was that whole view of the call? And so getting that is important to us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can maybe touch on the analytics a little bit later. Any as you've reviewed calls, you've been live, for a few months now, and any sort of, I don't know, customer anecdotes or any sort of discoveries from like the customers themselves in the calls. You were able to kind of look at calls and see, oh wow, this is kind of a new thing that we weren't expecting or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the main one was just like how many people pressed 2 for termites and didn't have anything to do with termites. But then also at the same time, really it's just understanding the language. And so there was some things that we knew meant termites, but the machine didn't. So kind of saying, okay, well, this is not something that we thought about when we were actually building it. So adding language in there and teaching the machine to be more accurate and better. And then the last thing really is just how accurate the machine can be sometimes. We have customers all over America. And so there was a customer in Hawaii, for instance, that called in and left a very interesting email address that I couldn't pronounce. Like, I can't tell you what it is because I don't even know it. But the machine was like, oh yeah, here's your email address. And the guy was, I think he was surprised too. He was like, yeah, that's right. So it's great to see like how well it actually listens.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely for some of the listeners, it is called machine learning because the machine has to learn. So some of those utterances and things like that is kind of the investment you make at the beginning. And of course, each business has different terminology. So that's kind of part of our process. And yeah, it's glad to hear that it's going well. Okay. Maybe next question is just how has your journey with AI sort of expanded and evolved since that first project? Or the first
So because of that first project and actually seeing the data that first project actually opened our eyes, it really made us start to dig into all of our other data and kind of see like where we were lagging and where we were lacking in technology or how we're handling our customers. And because of that, we actually are working on several use cases with Replicant that's going to lead to really taking some of those tier 1 calls off of our agents and letting that thinking machine resolve those calls. That way we're getting the more frustrated or the calls that really need that human empathy to our agents faster. And then also just making sure that we're routing the calls where they need to go. So teaching it, saying, okay, I understand that this particular bug needs to go to this agent, and having that routed correctly, which clearly we haven't had in the past.
I know that one of the current projects, we're also now incorporating the branches and some of that call flow as well. So that's, kind of another interesting piece of this is you have many remote locations.
Yeah, we have 498 different locations. And so when a caller came in before, they would just, get to the local office. But now, before that, that customer is actually connected with that local branch, that branch will know why they're calling. And then that way they'll be ready to help that customer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just one thing you said just a minute ago was just around, the agents are able to handle now these calls that need more empathy and just sort of maybe the more frustrated callers or whatever. Have you found that's actually helped the agents with their jobs and that they're appreciating sort of this, kind of less repetition and sort of more interesting kind of conversations, or any feedback from the field in that way?
Yeah, so we'll take the inspection. So it would take our agents anywhere between 4 and 5 minutes to schedule an inspection for the field, where it actually takes the thinking machine anywhere between a minute and a minute and a half to 3 minutes, kind of just depending on how quickly they type in the form or something like that. And it really has kind of resolved some of our anxiety when our calls are really high and there's lots of calls holding. So that really helped that group of individuals that were taking those kinds of calls. And the other thing is, swarm calls that says, are you having an active termite swarm? Those are those high empathy calls. So getting those to the agents faster, so those customers are dealt with, and actually we're there to alleviate those fears and things like that more efficiently, rather than just doing these easy inspections along the way, has increased they like challenging calls, right? And so we want to get those challenging calls to them.
Okay, yeah. I can just imagine being on the phone with a termite swarm in my kitchen or something.
Yeah, it's scary.
Okay, so maybe a little bit about analytics. How have you used analytics to inform your AI strategy and decision making business?
So really understanding that like 40 to 60% of the calls that were going down to the termite line, going through the termite line, were not termites. That's the biggest part of the analytics that we saw, that we're like, we need to change this. And in hindsight, I really wish we would have had that data before, because then I would have done like the natural language processing routing first before this use case. So we kind of did it backwards slightly, I feel like, but that's the biggest thing within the analytics. And then also still alleviating that AI fear by saying, hey, like our CSAT score for replicant is just as high as it is for our agents, and just continuing to communicate that with the stakeholders so they're more comfortable with the product as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Actually, I mentioned in the kind of the intro slides, we have that call assessment now, which I think we've implemented sort of since we started that first project with you all. So, so yeah, that's an option we have for future customers. But yeah, it's always good to sort of understand, the IVR landscape, and it's not uncommon for us to discover that people might think they're calling about a termite, but actually it's something different. Okay. Impact on customers. So we just talked a little bit about the CSAT survey. And any maybe more detailed feedback on like what it's like talking to a machine versus a human, or I don't know, any anecdotes you could share around just the consumer, your customer impact, any feedback you've gotten from directly from customers outside of the CSAT scores themselves?
Yeah, so during the first few months that we went live, I really watched the analytics. And one of the main things is like how many people would hang up either early in the flow or mid flow. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're losing all these customers, right? So we captured the phone number. I was able to go back in our records and see that those people did call back in, and they actually went a different route. So they got to a different representative. So to me, those early hangups and things like that was more, they knew they went to the wrong place. And so rather than saying anything, they came back around. it's also helped. There's so many, I want to say robocalls, really just like a lot of, I don't want to say scammers, but something like scammers that are calling companies right now. And it's a bot message, or it's something just like something on repeat and repeat and repeat. And so it actually cleared up our call volume. So when it went down that scheduling lead and there was no human interaction there, then we just resolved the call in the machine and we're like, okay, so that stopped it from coming to the agents. So it kind of cleaned that up as well. And then the last one it did is when we did get the low scores, so still using that CSAT score, when we got the low scores, I would listen to those particular calls within the thinking machine. And then I would also listen to low score calls in the same area with our agents, because I'm like, what's similar and what's different? And most of it was just they were scoring low because we may have not had an inspection at the time that they wanted that inspection. They may want it tomorrow and we were scheduling out like Monday or Tuesday, which is not normal for us, right? But they were scoring the machine low because of our scheduling, or they were scoring the agent low because of our scheduling. So it really was nothing that the machine did. So it really worked out to where the agents and the machine pretty much took the calls almost in the same way and got the same scores.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that the CSAT scores may be driven by a business parameter versus the actual like conversation itself.
Mhm.
How about like measures of success? We talked about CSAT a little bit. Are there other measures that you use for sort of assessing the effectiveness of AI in the contact center, and any kind of results you can share there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just how long it takes to resolve those calls. So we do consider that a success. Like I said, our agents usually take, between 4 and 6 minutes to resolve that call. The thinking machine can do it in, 2 to 3 minutes. So really it saved us a head count on that part. Another thing that I'm going to take as a win is we're not using a BPO this year because the thinking machine did take that volume, which is great for us. It's really hard to train a BPO. It's just like training your own company, except you don't get to choose like who's hired. And so it was really important for us to kind of be more self-sufficient in completing our calls. And I think with the thinking machine, it allowed us to do that.
Okay, well, how about looking ahead? Anything in the future you're excited about in terms of, I don't know, AI powered customer service or other areas in technology?
Yeah, well, I'm super excited about the NLP routing. The only other thing that I would say is like I went to Resolve in October, which of course is Replicant's technology get together conference. And I loved all the voices that they had through different AI and things like that. And so I'm really anxious to see like how far in advance can we don't want people to think that they're talking to a human because you don't want to trick them, right? But at the same time, we don't want a voice that's too happy when somebody calls in and is like, I have a problem with roaches, and the machine's like, great, like what can we help so just making sure that you're using a voice that actually really helps your business. And I think by the different voices and the different dialect that Replicant, which I know is going to be able to create or have created, and seeing how that may change our business is pretty exciting.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, we do have a few of the new voices almost ready. Yeah, and of course some of the conversation design, of course, we can adjust as well, um, for the actual implementation. Okay, last question, then we can get to the Q&A. Any advice you would give to others looking to implement AI in their business?
Yeah, and I know this is going to be kind of like, is that right? But I would say that we rolled out too slow. It took us to roll out our first use case. We turned it on territory by territory, but it took us about a month and a half. And I feel like Replicant our team was great. Our replicant team was great. And they're like, you probably want to roll out a little bit faster, because the more calls that you get into the thinking machine, the faster it learns and the better you are going to be, like, in the end. And I didn't listen, I'll be honest. I was like, no, we're going to roll out slow, right? So we did roll out slow, and it did take probably twice as long to get the machine where we wanted it to be. Whereas if we rolled out a little bit quicker, we could have probably been where we wanted to be faster. So I would say my piece of advice is, like, listen to your replicant team. They are the professionals with AI. We're the professionals with pest. I wouldn't expect them to say, like, if I was like, we need to get rid of roaches, and them say, well, let me see if I can take care of it slowly, right? Probably not right. So listen to their team. They know what they're talking about, or the replicant team, and take their advice.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So we have a few questions from the audience, so maybe we can kind of transition over to those. Okay, so the first question was, can you describe the workflow of the call example that we gave earlier? Sort of, was it inbound, outbound? Sort of, what was that flow? So I'm sure you can answer that question. So maybe,
yeah, it's all inbound.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an inbound call. So basically, they're calling your, well, we're in the middle of doing that, the top of the funnel sort of IVR replacement that you talked about. But right now, they'll call your legacy IVR, and then they press 1 or 2 or something, and then they're routed to that replicant thinking machine, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and then the inbound call, and then subsequently. So I guess maybe some other things maybe you could embellish on is, that example was pretty happy path, we would say, which is, the customer kind of answers all the yes/no questions. But maybe talk a little bit about some of the other edge cases where, I don't know, like if there's a swarm, I guess we route the call to a representative. Any other sort of edge cases or flows that you would add to that?
Yeah, so if it's a highly emotional call, we're going to get those to the agent faster than we would get just like a regular call, because there's that fear factor there. But what it's also taught us is really, like, how many calls we could resolve within the thinking machine that we're sending to agents. And not because we want to replace our agents. Our agents are great. It takes a long time to train a good agent. It's that maybe we don't have to hire as much in the busy season and then let go of people, like, when we slow down. But then the other thing is just, like, making sure that we're working in cohesive with our agents. So if the thinking machine can get some information before it gets to an agent, then that's just going to shorten our handle time on that side and be more of a streamlined experience for our customers.
Okay. All right. Next question was maybe more of a product question, but do you have any AI voice agents that do not sound robotic? So I guess on the example we gave, I think we're using Matthew, which is our one of our sort of standard voices. I guess I can answer. Have you heard any of the new voices yet, Michelle? You said at Resolve you were able to hear. Yeah. So I mean, yes, there are other voices. I think we think that the next generation ones are less robotic. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned, you didn't want to sort of fool the customers, but you are interested in sort of the next generation voices. So I don't know, anything else you would add there?
Yeah, well, I mean, and even with the replicants voice that we have now, it was a lot more less robotic, I guess, a lot less robotic than a lot of the other companies that we vetted. So it still sounds a little bit robotic, but at the same time, it's a clearer voice. It really seems more friendly than a lot of the other players in the field. So even this voice was better than a lot of the other companies.
So we do have some features where we can build in, like, slowing down the voice if they're reading back a key account number or some things like that. So there are some of those parameters that we can tweak that make it sound less or more kind of robotic. But okay, let's see. There's a question here about what % of customers opted out and wanted to speak to a live person? So I guess sort of what's the, I guess, escalated caller percentage in the system, and how do you kind of look at that?
So I'm going to say that right now the escalated caller percent is about 30%, but I don't believe that's because of the thinking machine itself. I think it's because they chose the wrong path, because when I go back and I listen to those calls of those escalated callers, they're current customers, and current customers shouldn't be going down this path.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Next question. Okay, maybe this is another question. How many different use cases are you using Replicant for on a daily basis?
So right now we're just using it for the scheduling. Our natural language processor is actually going to be going live next week. So that will be our second. And then down the line, we're going to have a payments self-service, and then we're also going to have a scheduling self-service for our current customers. So we're actually going to be using them for 4 different use cases this year.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, and in terms of the NLP that you mentioned, that's basically like a more of the what can I help you with kind of introduction versus, if you have current termite, press 1, or something else, press 2, right?
Yeah, it really just takes the choice away from the customer, as in it takes the choice of like just hitting numbers. So it's like, how can I help you? And then they say it, and we can transfer them to an agent rather than saying, okay, press 1 of this, press 2 of this, press 3 of this. Cause I think they just get frustrated and start hitting numbers.
Okay. Okay, so just quick follow-up. Whether the kind of the current use cases for new sales, I think it's you mentioned that current customers get transfer, which actually have a different endpoint. So this is really for kind of incoming leads as well. Is that right?
It's for incoming new termite customers, yes.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe there's a question here about I'm just going to paraphrase this a little bit. Differentiation of routing based on like the client attributes. So let's say it's a high value client or something like that. I don't know if you're using data in the workflow in terms of like once you look up a customer or something, is there a way to discover that they're like a high value client, maybe have a differentiated process for them? I'm not sure if that's part of the roadmap or not, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, so we are thinking about looking at using it for our national accounts as well. And then that way, if a national account comes in, if it's a specific national account, we may route it to one person or we route it to another. Another thing is certain accounts have to be serviced within a very small time frame. And so making sure that we expedite those are pretty important.
And when you say national account, is that like a business account or something?
That's like a business account.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Let's see, a couple more here. Maybe question. Okay. Any thoughts around using this technology for current customers, in addition to the new customers?
Mm-hmm. So our one of our use cases that will go this year is actually using the scheduling technology for our current customers. So if they need to change an appointment or have an additional appointment between the services, they'll be able to do it this way. And so they will have the option, of course, to speak to an agent, or they can do the self-service. And apparently between midnight and 6 a.m., a lot of people call pest control, and we're not open at that time. So I think it'll be really nice for them to say, okay, now I can schedule an additional service or reschedule an appointment that I already have, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and they don't have to wait for somebody to call them back the next morning.
Got it. Yeah, I could see. I don't know about termite swarms at night, but certainly the spiders come out at night. So I don't know. Nocturnal termites. Okay. Maybe a question here about just the window for scheduling and how does this machine know availability and things like that. Maybe talk a little bit about the scheduling piece and the integration that we built for that.
It's integrated with our branch's CRM. And so they actually can see the same scheduling that our agents would be able to see. So we did integrate that with our CRM. As soon as the schedule's completed, it actually goes onto the schedule of our inspectors, and they get a automatic email and text message saying, hey, you have an appointment, because a lot of our appointments are within 2 hours.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so I guess maybe part of that question was sort of how far in advance can you look and sort of what's the time frame of like, is it like a week in advance or a month in advance, or how do you constrain that so that you're servicing the 2-hour customer more quickly than say someone who doesn't have an emergency?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, a question here about how difficult was the integration with the CRM and scheduling?
So I gave that to our IT team and let them really vet out that integration. We have a homegrown CRM, so we don't use an out of the box functionality. So it is homegrown, which a lot of times can be a little bit more challenging to integrate with. And but Replicant and our IT team worked really well together, and they were able to make sure that the machine did what it needed to do.
Okay. There's a couple more questions here. We only have about 2 more minutes. So there was one question around, I'm kind of reading into this a little bit, but is there a way to build the thinking machine that doesn't require going live to improve response accuracy? So did Daisy talking about like the machine learning part of machine learning? Like, is there a way to do that without being live? And I will maybe let you answer in a second, but I'll preface this by saying typically our experience is that we test the machine jointly with internally, but also with our customers, and we really get to sort of a point where we were comfortable with the technology and the utterances and the models, and then we always learn something from customers when we go live. So we have this process that we call hypercare, where we'll slowly ramp up call volumes to minimize the impact on customers, but also to learn the most that we can. So I don't know if you had any more comments on just that hypercare process. And I know it's scary to sort of put a new technology in front of a direct customer, especially in a sales funnel. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
No, like, so when we were going through hypercare, we tested and tested and tested and tested and tested. And so when I say that, like, take your time in doing that UAT testing and building out the thinking machine to your locations are really, really important. But you're absolutely right. Like, we can test it all day long to what we know our business needs and our business wants. And then people will call in and ask for something completely different. And we're like, oh, didn't even think about putting that in there, right? So, and one of the best things that we've done this time, so last time it was, like I said, our agents tested it and our business tested it. But this time what we did was we actually took a lot of the recorded calls that we have, and we used the same terminology that our customers told us when we got through, and we learned a whole lot more. So I think we're going to be better after this current hypercare, because we used actual real life customers, like, this is how they said this, and then built it out that way.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time we have today. Michelle, thank you so much for spending the time. It was great to chat with you, and I hope everyone else found it valuable. And I hope you will join us in the next one. But anyway, thanks again, Michelle. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.